Well, I would say the inherent need for trust is, and even what you trust yourself, because sometimes we don't even trust our own judgment, is without information from some source, it's hard to make decisions. If you don't make decisions, then you're stagnant. If you're stagnant, then you're not moving forward. And not moving forward is not being human. A lot of us are really good at being stagnant, but we're not being true to what we're supposed to be about. We're supposed to be progressive, supposed to be continuous improvement moving forward. So I think that those of us who seek it out more is because we know that we can't do it by ourselves, and we need the other people that we can trust to fill in those gaps or provide that opportunity or that connection to help to take that next step, wherever that next step may be.
Welcome to Winning Strategies Playbook, the podcast where we welcome business leaders, CEOs, and industry experts to discuss the rise to the top, building wealth, and real estate insights. Here's your host, Jeremy Spann.
Welcome to Winning Strategies Playbook. For more information on this podcast, you can go to myexperiencedrealtor.com. That's experience with an ED. You can click on podcasts, go down to download this episode on Amazon, Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, all the different. You can even listen to the episode on our website. And of course, if you're looking to buy and sell real estate anywhere on the planet, on our homepage, click Find a Trusted Professional, and we will get you connected with someone just as advanced as the Spann Group. But more importantly, for today, you can click on podcasts and read more. Part 2, because we have a guest that has returned to give us some more wisdom and updates of some changes that has happened. Welcome, Kevin Davis, my friend. How are you doing?
I'm good, Jeremy. How are you doing?
Man,
good
there's that saying, you can burn a candle at both ends. The problem is when you start to run out of wax in the middle, right?
Unfortunately, I've felt that burn a few times.
Yeah, literally, no pun intended, right?
Exactly.
And as you know, I tell fantastic jokes as part of this for my father-in-law, right? As you sympathetically laughed last time you were in here, I can expect you to do that this one again. And I thought this one was kind of fitting for the weird weather we've been having right here in Texas.
No doubt. Yeah, a lot of rain.
So, and I think you'll really, being that you've made a transition from TCU's executive MBA program onto other things, but being that you came from that academic space, I thought you'd appreciate this one of weather.
All right.
You ready?
I'm ready.
All right.
Yeah.
Tell me Texas isn't made for the cold weather without telling me Texas isn't made for the cold weather. And I'll go first. My online class got canceled due to snow.
That actually happened. Not for the EMBA program, but
you're like, hey guys, we're going to cancel online classes because there's snow outside. So everybody stay in your pajamas.
What's funny, Jeremy, about that is I resigned from my position at TCU, I think when I had my power on for maybe an hour at that time, because it was the first day of the rolling blackouts.
Oh,
that's the day I resigned. So,
yeah.
But yet, if I recall correctly, classes were closed for most because everybody didn't have power. So that actually did happen. So.
That is funny, I actually had no idea. I was Googling jokes and I was like,
no, actually, and then my daughter was one of them. So, because public school was out that week.
And the funny,
even online.
Yeah. The funny thing is so February 14th, Valentine's Day was on a Sunday, and I was scheduled to be on a flight that morning to come back here from Colorado because I had all these meetings set up, and the night before, 2 of the meetings had canceled, and then that morning, right when I was getting ready to leave for the airport, another one, a major meeting that I had canceled, and I was like, you know what? And that same day, or during that same time, Wolf Creek, the mountain I go skiing on, was getting like 3 feet of powder. Okay, and I was like, I'm just going to go ahead and cancel my trip, which I'm glad I did because all I would have done is flown back in here. Even if I could have landed, then I would have done nothing but sit in the house for a week, which would have drove me nuts. So instead I went skiing and then turned around. Maybe I should have come back because I had an incident on the mountain, which ended up getting a tear in my knee.
Really?
Oh, yeah. And it's not even a sexy story. Like I wasn't doing like a really cool acrobatic Olympic style jump. I was just going through deep snow, came up on some trees, turned, fell goofy. And I was telling Laura, I was like, you know, after almost 50 years of being on this planet, almost half a century, all the things that I could have done to hurt myself, I just felt funny. Like
that happens, man.
It does. Like I was like, man, I need to make up like a story as like I was fighting a grizzly bear or something like that, you know, because he was trying to make out with Laura or whatever. And
yeah, that was fun.
That should have been the joke, right? That should have been the joke.
Yeah. So actually getting older, definitely. I actually hurt my knee playing basketball over 20 years ago. And I think when Taylor was 2, so about 10 years ago, I was walking in the house and I cut a corner in the house, going from one room to the next too quickly, and all of a sudden I felt tweaking my knee. It was that same injury. So every once in a while, if I move in a certain direction, then I feel it again. So it happens. Yeah.
I think the weirdest part too, and I've talked about this with another episode, that is there's really that difference between being hurt and injured. Yes. Right? Because like when something stops functioning, like walking up the stairs and the leg doesn't work, right? And you're like, it was less about pain and more about functionality. And that's just and that's a reality that, I think as humans we get to live with, is as we get older, things don't heal as fast, and, and things will break for the goofiest. It's never anything really cool, right? Like, man, I got a really cool story about this. That's why I feel like I need to fabricate things. So, what Kevin's journey, if the audience is listening to this episode, you can go back and find Kevin Davis's first episode where we talk about his journey to where he's gotten, and yet his journey has continued. Yeah. Since that last episode. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, February 15th, as power is going in and out, rolling blackouts and all that, opportunity presented itself where I decided to move on from the role I had at TCU as Director of External Relations and Recruiting for the MBA program, and join a company called Gameplan. Gameplan is an education technology company that works with athletes at all levels of athletics, whether it be the pro athletes with the NFL, NBA, NHL, MLB, MLS we've been working with in the past, college athletic departments around the country, including TCU, as well as some high school and youth organizations. And the objective is, ironically, is to power their journey. Athletes are not athletes forever. So therefore, eventually they have to get a job or have a career outside of athletics. For most of them, over 90, almost 100% of them, that journey ends after college. For a lot of others, it ends after high school. But yet athletics provides them with the identity that they go through a certain transition. And that transition from being an athlete on scholarship or even a pro athlete who was paid a certain amount of money, at a certain point it comes to end, and it comes to end well before they're done living or being a professional. Similar to what you experienced twice in your career with the military and the police department. So, and a lot of the experiences that a lot of your classmates and others done. So similar in that regard. But this time it's really with athletes. And most of our the organizations we work with are athletic departments at the collegiate level in the United States. So most of the journeys that we're trying to help power are going from a collegiate student athlete to working professional in business. So we provide educational development for life skills, career, but also for compliance training. So Title IX, sexual violence prevention, sports wagering courses that was required by the NCAA for each athlete to take in order for them to compete. But also things related to building your resume, choosing your major, social justice, so social issues, career, life issues, all those things are online courses that we have on our platform. They're assigned out by the athletic department to help as we partner with them in the development of this athlete. But the objective is really to prepare the athlete for life after sport, whether that be once they graduate from undergrad or whether it be longer down the road. So
yeah, and that's really fascinating because when I have conversations with other fellow veterans, soon to be active duty to veterans or leaving the PD, retiring PD, is if you're not working for yourself and you're not an entrepreneur, that whatever organization you're with, either at some point you're going to put that uniform on for the last time, whether it be an athletic uniform, military uniform, and either one of two things is going to happen. Either you're going to make that choice or the entity is going to make that choice for you, right? And so the only control you really have is if you make that decision prior to them making that decision for you. So are you going to be a Peyton Manning or are you going to be a Brett Favre, right? Kind of situation. But ultimately, no matter how much you feel like you still have to offer, someone else has that power to make that decision for you. And when that happens, have you mentally prepared for what that transition is going to be? Because you find out just how, through naturally a lot of work, a lot of, success and everything else to get to where you're at. But ultimately that no matter how much value you've created to get there, you've lived in a comfort zone for a long time. And then now is the ambiguity of what next. Right.
Exactly.
So, so how does this program that you have address that?
In a few ways. One is through education, online education, which is completely opposite what I was doing before, obviously. But yet, the courses on the platform are short vignettes. So we'll put it that way, 6 to 8 minutes. So bite-sized chunks. And what we do is, whether it be compliance training, whether it be life skills, whether it be career-related, providing content that can be consumed on a mobile device very quickly. The idea is not for someone to be graded. It's really more about comprehension. It's really more about do you understand enough to take action with the information that's been presented to you? So in each course, there'll be a short couple questions just to test the mindset, or just to make sure they retain the information in the middle or as they go through the content. And then at the end, there's another shorter assessment. But again, the objective is not to assign an A, B, or C. It's the objective is, do you understand? Yeah. Do you feel more comfortable and confident as relates to learning more about how to be more aware of which social media and how that can impact you as you pursue a job or as you pursue your athletic career, whether it be working with organizations on policies that they have that the athletes need to follow, or even the coaches or the advisors. So, but then the other part is, and this is where the growth is going to come for the company, is connecting the athletes with brands or employers. So if you were hiring someone and I were to tell you that there's a place where there are a number of young professionals who have a college degree, they are used to getting up at 5 a.m. and being done at 9 p.m. at night. They're used to following a structured schedule. They are coachable, and they are used to working within a team. Would you hire them, or at least be willing to talk to them?
James Peterson, I know I just hired you. You're fired. Kevin, who do you got for him? So you know the news, right? James came to work with me.
Oh, he did? Okay, that's good. Oh, I didn't know that. Right.
And it's funny because as we do, new client engagement, we always have a Zoom to meet the clients. Clients meet the team. Right. And it's become the running joke is every time he opens up, it's like, hey, I'm just the new guy that's just trying to learn everything. Right. And my job is to be yelled at by Jeremy. And then it gets to me and it's like, my sole job is to yell at James. But no, that is, it is really interesting to hear that, because I think that when people think of athletes, they don't think about all those things, right? No. They don't think like, hey, wait a minute, they already know how to work as a team. They're coachable. They already know how to get up early and work late. Very strong work ethics and everything else. So How do you go about translating that message to the potential employers to go, did you realize that this is the kind of product you're going to get? And I don't mean to dehumanize it.
No.
In my mindset. But this is the type of product you're going to get on that. So how do you go about that?
Well, you know, what's interesting is that there's a number of companies that already support athletics and advertise and sponsor. So a lot of them have awareness of the opportunity. It's just that the bridge or platform to make the connection more seamless and cost effective has not been there. So Gameplan's been around for over 10 years, but yet we're at that stage of growth now where we have a number of athletic departments from around the country on the platform. We're engaging them in many different ways. So we're at that next stage where we can move towards, now we have the breadth of, you know, if I'm a company and I want to be able to get the best talent from the West Coast to the East Coast and not get on the plane, and at least have confidence that I know who they are and where I can find them, then this is a good place to go. Gameplan is a good platform for an employer to do that. Because back in my days when I worked at a major Fortune 500 company, we had long meetings about what schools we're going to visit, because we have to plan budget to get on the plane. We're going to do a presentation on campus, who's going to be talking to the faculty in the career services office, make sure we get the right candidates. That's a lot of time and energy. So when you think about the proposition to the company, say this is more cost effective. We know more about the athlete because they've been taking courses online with us for over 4 years of being a student athlete. They have taken assessments that tells us more about who they are and what their interests are. And then on top of that, you already know all those other things I mentioned about what all athletes have to go through if they are a collegiate student athlete. When you say that to a company, you say, okay, well, where do I get started? But yet that's where that next phase of growth is going to come for the company. So we're in a transition in that regard to make sure that we are transitioning back to what the core mission of the company was about at the beginning. But in order to get to where we are, we had to provide value to the athletic organizations at all levels such that we can have that level of engagement with the athlete, such that we then could be a trusted advisor to help them with life after they leave that athletic organization.
Man, yeah. So how many ballpark clients would you say that you have?
We have over 300 athletic organizations on the platform.
Wow.
So again, you know, pro leagues, teams, as well as college athletic departments around the United States. If you know, most of the ones you see on TV, we have. This week is NFL minicamp, so we have professional football players online taking courses about different policies that they have to follow for as a rookie, or either as a veteran, or all players. So that's great. For us, that's major milestone to have that level of partnership and trust from brands that we all know, universities that we know. The key, though, is that our relationships with those organizations are important to us, but our mission is really about that athlete, that individual. No different than, with TCU. The student, what happens to Jeremy after graduation, what happens to any of your classmates or any other alums while they're going through as a student and afterwards, that making sure that what they've invested in, that they can get that return in the future. A little different here for the athlete because, again, their identity is based around being an athlete. Their future may not be tied to being an athlete, at least not playing or performing as one. It may be that, as you see a lot of them on TV, okay, I become a general manager or some become an owner if they're lucky. Some will be in broadcasting and all that. And they have a career that's based upon their celebrity to help them go towards other ends. But for most, especially those who didn't play professional, what happens after age 22 when your career is over? The thing that you've identified with for most of your life is no longer there. So that's the most important thing about our company because, who do I work with? Former student athletes. So if you ran track at a small junior college or Division III school in Wisconsin or Texas. You can be a business development executive, or you can be a analytics and CRM consultant, because I work with both, and they both ran track, and that's what they do. Or if you were a shooting guard at a university, and you after 3 years of playing, you no longer were on scholarship because the coach changed. Well, you can be CEO of an education technology company, because that's where our CEO is. You can be chairman of the board and wrestled as a student athlete, because you'd be amazed how many people were student athletes and what they're doing today. They found their way to certain places, but they found their way with some bumps and bruises and some curves, like a lot of us do. So really, the organization's mission is really to help make sure that journey is more clear and especially more informed. Yep.
So how many, and this is probably a very open question, is when you're attracting these athletes, what percentage of them would you say are like, hey, I know this has got a limited shelf space, right? Where I realize that as good as it gets is my senior year, whether it's high school, college, or whatnot, just because they know, or do they have to, and I don't want to say this in a wrong way, but maybe lie to themselves because they got to feel like they're still performing, even though the reality of, hey, your time is coming to an end in this portion of your life?
Having worked with a number of former student athletes at Gameplan, I would say all of them would say that at best it was senior year. But that would be the female student athlete, because there is no pro league to go to unless you play basketball or unless you're Olympian. So you already know that this is it based upon just the opportunities available.
Yeah.
Now, the opportunities available for a man is not that much different, but you've grown up watching it. It's the reason why that hope and dream that, hey, I could be that one to make it is still there. So a lot of them hold on to that. But then most sports and athletic department and university do not have a pro league. So for most, they know, but then it goes back to identity. This is all I've known. I've gotten up at 5 a.m. and been done late at night because of this sport. All I've done, my clothes, my who I hang out with, what I do, all that is tied to something that's about to go away at age 22.
That purpose.
Right. So they're right. So therefore that's a part of that next evolution, that, to your point of how do we help in changing that, that's where two assessments we offer. One is a identity assessment, and one is more about your next play as you go pro, but go pro and probably not professional sports, but pro in something else, is to help the athlete kind of do a self-examination, be more self-aware about what else could be. How can you get that same drive that you get when, no matter how many fans are in the stands, that competition, the rush, the people screaming and rooting and all that. How do you get that when you're sitting behind a desk or you're working as a professional? So that's where we're working on some things to help bridge that gap and show, hey, you're one of many that have made this transition, and look at what others have done to be successful. And luckily, I was fortunate enough to work with a lot of people who've done that already.
Yeah, and I is going through a purpose change, a couple times myself, leaving the military and then leaving the PD is, it didn't really resonate with me till the last couple of years. Is I had to change a little bit of my perception of things, right? I use this funny analogy, which is, and I think you and I have talked about it, is I learned to stop playing football and start playing baseball. Being that in football, you can actually go into a season with the mentality of, hey, there is the possibility, because it has been done before, that we could win every single game in the season and in the postseason and the Super Bowl, right? Mm-hmm. And it has been done in football. But in baseball, in the history of never ever, has anybody won 20-something games or 130-something games or whatever it is?
I think the record's 119.
Yeah,
but, right.
But you can go through and not win every game, but still be the best.
Right.
Right. Mm-hmm. And that was really hard mentality for me to evolve into, because I had a little bit of a woe is me. I don't want to be a defeatist. I lost that, blah, blah, blah. But it was just that, hey, guess what? You can't win them all, right? That's the reality of life. You're not going to win them all. Yep. And and as well as me and my stories, I've had some significant losses, but those losses are the reason why today I am where I am.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. Right. And so I had to learn how to repurpose. And even that, the more my sense of purpose is it's almost like an ever evolving, changing thing for me now. So it was like, started the Spann Group, wanted to do a lot in real estate. Then I wanted to be number one in real estate. Then I wanted to be number one in referrals. And then it was just, one thing that led to another, that it was like, okay, well, what is the new purpose? And then now is I'm within a couple of years of my purpose is I want to be able to retire and spend it with my wife going and traveling, right? But if you don't have something to gravitate towards, then it's like an open desert that you're just going through going, is there water out here or not?
Jeremy, I would say that what you describe is your goal or goals or that target has changed. What hasn't changed, and this goes back to the identity, why I keep bringing that up, is also your brand. Your goal has changed, but who you are and what makes you unique has not changed. How you express that, how that is demonstrated, whether it be professionally or personally, has evolved. I think too often we miss opportunities because we get confused about goals in our identity. So, for example, I said many years ago that I could never see myself living in Texas. My goal at the time was to get an MBA. And I was looking at different schools because I wanted to get an MBA in the information system. So University of Texas being one of the leading universities that offered that, and also was a part of a consortium graduate study in management. That was a group of schools that offered fellowship opportunities to minority candidates. So I applied. But I put Texas 3 because I said, well, it fits what I'm looking for, but I just can't see myself there. I'm from Chicago. I'm a Midwesterner. So I put Indiana first because it was one of the founders of the consortium. And then New York University second because, of course, the NFL, MLB, all the sports leagues which is interesting. That was my thinking then and ironically where I'm at today. But that was, Indiana, New York University, Texas. So I go to Indiana, and I get 3 job offers. 2 of them are in Texas. One was in Detroit, but that was with Ford. And the other 2 was with EDS, with artists, company formerly known as EDS, and then Sabre. Sabre and EDS was offering a lot more money than Ford, and so therefore it was pretty obvious that I'm going to Texas. So I had to be open-minded. But again, my identity was Midwest, Chicago, big city. So I had to change. My goal, though, was to go to get a degree to advance my career such that my parents can say, okay, Kevin's okay. Because I'm only child, as I mentioned before, only. But, I thought I would be doing that in Chicago. But all of a sudden, no, Kevin, you're going to Texas. You avoided 2 years before, but now you're going to Texas. So I ended up taking the job at Sabre. So I had to be open-minded that I can still be who I am somewhere else. I can still accomplish this goal of independence and moving forward in my career and getting value from the MBA. It just happens to be somewhere that I didn't think I was going to go to. Right. So going back to what you said about yourself, I remember in our discussions, you had that same kind of wrestling of, My goal is when you go into the MBA program, is I want to advance. I know I can do more. Originally it was move up into PD. Over time it was like, well, I got my own restaurant. I got other interests. Now all these other people I met, all of a sudden your eyes were open, and it's because you were open to listening, then you made a pivot. So how you reached that goal was different, and the goals changed, but who you are is still the same. The core of who you are and what made you unique as a military officer, as a police officer, and now as a real estate executive, it's still Jeremy. But the how and the goals have changed. So I think that brand, because anyone who's known you a long time and knew you through all that, you're still the same guy.
Yeah.
Right. So your brand and who you are is the same. How it is expressed and how it's manifested has grown and evolved. So I think too often, going back to the athlete, going back to ourselves, we identify with certain things that may limit our opportunity or limit our growth because we think we need that in order to be who we are. And when I think of an athlete's transition, they may think I need to get up at 5 a.m. to be alive. So a lot of them still today, even though they don't play, they still get up and work out. Why? Because that's what they've done all their life. But now it's for a different purpose. It's for a different goal in mind. It's just to stay in shape as opposed to I'm getting ready to compete. But it's used to it. So that's where you can keep some things in transition and have it refocus, but yet your identity has changed. No longer are you an athlete, but now you are that business person, or you're that whatever it is that's next, just like you did in your career. And just like what I had to do. I mean, after 12 years at TCU, I could easily say, well, I'm an academic administrator. That's who I am. I never saw myself that way. So therefore, it was never a idea that this is who I'm going to be. But in order to advance or to move forward, opportunities within the business school were limited. So people always said, well, have you ever looked at other jobs outside of the business school? I said, no, I'm not here to be a university professor. I'm here because I want to help people develop their careers in business. I can't do that on the other side of campus or even the athletic department. That's not what I came here to do. That's not my purpose. That's not who I'm. That's not my brand. So that's why that never was an option. So when opportunities to leave and go on somewhere else came about that allowed me to help people move forward in their careers, that's who I am. That's part of my brand. I'm doing it differently. I'm not recruiting professionals to a program. I'm helping develop software and courses. So the how is different, but yet who I am and what I'm doing is still the same. And that's why I think too often we get those things mixed up.
So what would you say the struggle was like to make that decision? Because it is a pretty big jump, right? Mm-hmm. And, especially, I mean, at one of the most pivotal times in the planet, with the pandemic and everything else, is, I mean, what was going through your thought process when you were like, man, this is what I know. This is comfortable. Right. This is secure.
Right.
And now I'm going to go punish myself with some more ambiguity of jumping into something that, I mean, I'm sure there's things that, gave you the confidence that, this will work out. Right. But still there's that, jump, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting about that is it was the similar wrestling that I went through before I even joined TCU. Because I even said I would never see myself driving to Fort Worth every day from Capel. Because ironically, just last week, Director of Career Services, Graduate Career Services at TCU, after 14 years in the position, she moved on. But before she took the job, the predecessor in that position was a client of mine and said she was moving on to a corporate job and say, hey, I'd like to recommend you to be in the position. And without thinking about it long, I said, I can't see myself doing that. Just because I was already locked into running my own business, being an entrepreneur, working from the house. This is this flow is nice. I'm no longer doing the corporate thing. So, man, working for somebody else, driving that far, I don't know. 2 years later, a little recession happened, daughter born, opportunity came again. Someone said, hey, we're looking for someone to help us with recruiting for the MBA program. You know anyone? Yeah, I think I'm interested. So again, I had to be open, I had to think about it. But it was that wrestling, way. It's great to be wanted, but I don't know. I got this, I see myself here. So, this time around, game plan, I've actually been an advisor to the CEO up until the time I joined the company. We've been working together for almost 10 years. So I've seen the maturation of the company over time and all the pivots and changes. So that was familiar. We had talked on and off about doing this for a long time, but the opportunity had presented itself because the company hadn't grown where it needed to be. So there was the financial impact of that too. But then again, the comfort you talked about. COVID-19 made sure everybody was uncomfortable. And for me, what was comfortable about being in the MBA program was all taken away. There was no alumni events. There was no recruiting tours around the school. There was no, there was still class on the weekends, and I would go to campus for that. There was no, meeting with people on campus with other members of the team. So a lot of things had changed. So I would say that made it easier in some regards. And most people say, well, you did make a change during a pandemic and a blackout. And I said, yeah, I did. But reason being is because I had a lot more time to think, when a lot of those other things were happening about who I am. Am I, I turned 51 last year, turned 52 this year. At this stage in my career, if I stay down this path, I am an academics administrator. Is that really who I am? No, nothing's wrong with that. But is that me? Is that all I am? Now, anyone who's gone through the program, talked to me, I've coached, advised people for a long time. But yet, at that stage, my primary brand was going to be associated with something that I'm good at. But is that the best of me at this stage in my career? So that was the conversation I was having with myself. It was not as much about TCU. It wasn't about the MBA program. It wasn't about COVID-19. It was about what Kevin, when he looked in the mirror, how did I feel about me, where I am, and what I know I could be doing and what I should be doing? And also being true to what I've talked when I talk to you or anyone else in the program, or when the same questions asked me, Kevin, what do you think I should do? You got to take that. You got to take that leap, man. You got to move forward. You can do this. You can, and then I would tell the person, here's what you've done already to prove that you can do this. So why not? So I was having that conversation myself. I've even asked other people that I trust, the same thing, and then talked to my wife, of course, about it. And that's where I found myself taking a job for something else I said I never would do. So when I left Sabre, which ended in a way that was where I got laid off. Could have took another job and got demoted, which I talked about in the previous podcast. I think I did. But the thing I walked away from that, I said, okay, I don't want to deal with software developers ever again. I mean, this whole back and forth, I just don't want to deal with that. I've done that. That was good. I'm over and done with it. So 2 years ago, Vin, our CEO, Vin McCaffrey, great guy. Growth in the company was going up, but the software platform needed some focus. So I was giving him some advice of what he could do with the development team and all that. And then he said, man, I really could use your help. And I said, well, yeah, we can figure something out. So he expanded my advisory role such that I could work with the development team. And then next thing you know, pandemic happens a year later, and then I'm working with them, helping. And then during the pandemic last year, NFL expanded, the relationship with the NFL expanded, the NBA restart. So if you can imagine, everyone who was in the bubble, including the players, coaches, GMs, front office, media, cook, chefs, barbers, all of them had to go through some type of protocol of compliance training on our platform. That happened last July. So then at the same time, we're steadily, despite what was going on in turbulence in the college market, that changed. So all of a sudden now things opened up towards the end of last year where the company was reached out to by a company called Ex-Athlete, and an Ex-Athlete who focuses on careers for athletes. And they had financial backing where they wanted to merge two companies together. So then I talked about it, and we said, is this the right thing for the business at this time? And it was. And then that turned into an opportunity for me to come on board to do something I said never would do again.
Which is funny because, when you're talking about having a conversation in the mirror, and
right.
One of my favorite sayings is, the biggest liar in the room is the one in the mirror.
That's right.
Right. And we lie to ourselves, even, I can have that fifth drink or whatever, whether little or large. And,
right.
But at some point, you got to have that real conversation and do things that scare us.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That's right.
I mean, that's my daughter, this has been in recent, was talking with Laura and was like, man, Dad's not scared of anything. He's an old Marine. And Laura just laughed and said, man, you'd be surprised that your dad actually does things that scares him. Whether it's something as simple as, funny enough, is taking the ski lift to go up, right? And then every once in a while, because somebody falls off or whatever, it stops and you're sitting there swinging. And Laura laughs because she knows me well enough that I don't show it physically, but she can see it in my face because she's married to me. She's like, you okay? And I'm like, I am so terrified right now sitting on top of this thing.
Right.
Right. Or something I was terrified to do was I had been hearing from other fellow PD and Marines and veterans and spec ops guys that, as it turns out, that people that come from our environment, when they end up finding out that due to all these adrenaline dumps and TBIs and everything else you go through, have an effect on your testosterone. And that, maybe that was a contributor to why I was so tired and not focused and not having a lot of clarity over the last couple of years. But I was like, I don't want to go get it tested because I don't want to be known as a guy that has low T, right?
Right.
And then I go, and it was like low. Like you're supposed to be like, I think it's like between 300 and I don't know, maybe it's 1,000 or whatnot. And like 300 is like the ultimate, you can't go below. And mine was like 120, right? And it was just like, whoa, right? Like, hey. And then it was also less scary as I started to find out that other people that I really had a lot of respect for and admiration for were like, no, man, I had the same thing. But being that I travel between here and Colorado, instead of going down to the clinic to get my weekly shot, I had to get on the self-injection. And I am terrified of needles.
Oh, I know that.
Yeah. I don't know what it is. There's just something that punctures skin. Hey, putting bullets in people's skin, I'm totally cool with that. But sharp little needles, not so cool with that.
That's funny.
So self-injecting
right.
is, so Laura will go, hey, it's, been 4 days, you need to do injection. And I know what benefit I'm getting out of it, and I'll just sit there and literally wrestle with myself for 30 minutes, and she's just like, what is it? I said, man, but I still do it because it's something that scares me. And that even what's given me the ability to continue to be successful in business is a combination of things. Is one, not being satisfied, having that hunger, right? Combined with, if I'm going to satisfy that hunger, it means I got to go do something scary.
Right.
Which means I got to take it to the next level. Like this current deal that I'm working on, it's been 3 years in the works. And it is. I was telling Laura just yesterday, I said, man, I was less terrified when people were shooting at me. Because right as we gain an inch, it's an event occurs in it, or whichever, or another potential buyer enters, and it's just like every time I overcome it, and I was just like, man, actually the last 3 years of stress added together doesn't hold a candle to the stress that I deal with every single day.
Right.
but I got to make a choice, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do I continue to jump into what's scary and pushing the needle on this thing, or do I do what a lot of people will do is just sit back and go, no, I'm good.
Right.
And I'm not okay with sitting back and going, no, I'm good. I've got to keep pressing forward. And of course, I wouldn't do things that were scary if I didn't, see the value and opportunity on the other side of it. But there's also, I feel like I'm a lot more successful at it too now, is going back to that football versus baseball analogy is, you know what? This thing's not done till it's done. And we got another 90 days before this thing is signed, sealed, and delivered and the ink is dry and everything else. A lot can happen in 90 days, especially when you're dealing with, 8 and 9 figures, right? I mean, that's an enormous amount of money. And the only thing I can do is just make that decision to get up and keep pressing forward. But doing it also, there's things that are satisfying about it, right? Because just like athletes and first responders and military is, we love competition, right? But now, instead of somebody else being the competition, is I'm competing with myself to make sure that I'm doing everything that I have learned to do the right way. And one of the things that just makes life and business simpler that I've really learned to just really be excited about, and I was just having this conversation with a friend of mine yesterday that stopped by, is it's really amazing that when you're focused on just doing the right thing, everything's going to be okay. Right? Doesn't mean that there isn't going to be problems, there isn't going to be objections you have to overcome or any of these complications that come along. But when you're solely focused on doing the right thing, it's kind of like with this larger deal, and this is a very well-known organization that is trusting me with a lot of equity to go do this. And they're like, man, we just want to make sure that we are protected, that if, we don't want to be stuck with money that we're going to lose. And I can look at them and say, I will be the first one to terminate this thing before anybody that y'all have, all your analysts, attorneys, or anybody else. I'll be the first one to wave a flag to go, we need to kill this right now. Because to protect the interest of those that have entrusted me with their money, right? And that's really the value, and what's important to me is continuing to keep building those things that of trust, because I've been in those positions where trust has been broken. And quite honestly, I think there's the most painful thing in the world, because look, somebody you don't know that well, it's real hard for them to violate your trust, right? It's those closest to you that violate the trust that really cut deep.
That's right.
And I've been cut a number of times, and I could have made the decision to go, you know what, I'm just going to protect myself and never be cut again. But I was like, but that's comfortable. That's not scary, right? And then you make that jump and you get in there. I mean, like you hitting a trifecta, right? Don't see yourself living in Texas. Don't see yourself driving to Fort Worth, and you don't see yourself getting back in the marketing software.
That's right. And what's interesting about that, Jeremy, is I was reflecting as you were talking. TC's been around since 1873. Let that sink in for a minute. So you can't get much more stable than that.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's going to be there. Now, there's things that's happened at the university, all universities, where you say, okay, for staff employees, things are changing. You don't know what's going to come, hiring freezes, not getting a raise, things like that. Or a lot of people have been furloughed, although TCU hasn't had to do that, thankfully. So despite that uncertainty and things not being as comfortable as they were before the pandemic, it's still, this is not going away. So then someone would say, well, why would you leave that to go to a very small company that's being merged, to lead a team of young professionals who have not a whole lot of experience, where your development team is primarily in India, where the pandemic is even worse, and they're working from home? Why would you do that? Well, it's not comfortable, that's for sure. But it was about what we talked about before. It was a couple things. One, which I can't go without saying. Our CEO, Ben. No, we've worked together now for almost 10 years. It'll be 10 years next month. And, this is someone who trusts me, to your point. This is someone who has confided in me. And this is someone who said, I want you to manage the majority of the investment to grow our product because I trust you. Now, this is his company that he started. His family's future is dependent upon the company. And he trusts me to take that role. Now, last time Ben and I saw each other face to face maybe 5 years ago. But we've talked to each other every week during that time. Now, we'll see each other in a month, thankfully. It's been a while. But my point to that, Jeremy, is that the relationship and the trust and knowing that you feel valued, that's when when you see that opportunity is there, you have to open your mind to say, I know I said I'd never do this again, but this is way more valuable and more right, going back to doing the right things, as you said, than whatever happened before. Because before, the real reason wasn't about software development. It wasn't about the development team. It was about the trust, the teamwork. The relationship wasn't there. It wasn't the work. It wasn't that I wasn't good at it. It was more of that. So because that is present, then I should go ahead and do that. Because it's not that I can't, it's because I can do it and I do it well. So also the opportunity to lead a team. Developing talent is something that I love doing. So having a team of people who are looking to me to help them develop and grow, to help us grow the business, to help us grow the product, the content that we have in the system. The conversation I have as I'm coming in with our creative director, you would never know that he's only 24. But great person to work with. When the opportunity became clear that we could be working together full time, that's one of the reasons why I jumped at the chance, because that was someone who I said I can work with. Person I used to work with at TCU, he's working with us too. That was a great opportunity to say, hey, we can work together again. The team as a whole, a lot of young professionals who are former student athletes who are examples of what we're trying to develop in mass. It's just exciting to see something that is important to me and I'm passionate about: growth, advancement, development, technology, and sports and education. That's everything I've ever did in my career. It's all in one job. So by opening my mind, and it allowed me to see that this is a culmination or combination, at least not culmination because I'm not dead anytime soon, but this is a combination of all the things that I've done before in one. And also things that I'm very passionate about, but also I'm good at. So, and most importantly, the leader that I'm working with is someone who trusts me. So I think a lot of times if we're not open-minded and we're not listening, then we may prevent ourselves the opportunities to realize what our brand and what we're really supposed to be about. So that's why making this transition, or any transition anyone would make, those are the types of things I would recommend people think through. But the listening part is important because this is something, like I said, we talked on and off about a long time. I had to be clear about what I needed in order to be there. He had to be more clear about what that was needed. And as a result, it worked out. But there was more about that than it was about leaving something. It was more about where I'm headed. So just like it has been for you,
Yeah. It's really interesting is this deal I keep referring to that may or may not close in the next 90 days. I don't have any major control over, whether something does or doesn't. But it'll be funny is, should this deal close in the end of August, will literally be 5 years to the date of when I trusted someone under false pretenses, right?
Right.
Is because they were charismatic. They very charismatic personality, and I wanted to, right? And what's really interesting is this particular deal, that previous person and the person that I have now, there's a lot of similarities. Not the same person by any shape or means, but both of them in the Marine Corps, both of them F-18 pilots, both of them MBAs from TCU. I mean, there's so many similarities where the first one 5 years ago that I trusted just violated everybody's trust, which would probably keep just about anybody else from ever wanting to trust again. And then now here's someone of similar backgrounds, a lot of similarities, but I'm leaning into with just the full force of trust, and they're trusting me. You know, the difference now is before I was trying to trust someone that I didn't have any say or any autonomy or anything in, whereas now I do, right? Now I can make decisions. And it's been really kind of I'm not really an emotional guy, but it's been an emotional navigation of going, man, this is a large deal. This is a large, the last time I went down this path, I lost everything I had, and I was holding the bag for $4 million. I mean, there's nothing. Let me just tell you what.
Right.
If you ever want to have an incredibly comfortable conversation with your spouse, go home and say you lost all your money, all her money, and oh yeah, by the way, you owe $4 million. And which, 2 years prior to that, I couldn't even fathom what $4 million was. Right. And then so I have every reason to not do this, right? To be scared and not jump into it. But it's that, man, and I think intrinsically inside of me is I have this need and this desire and this want and this have to have trust with people. Not because to make the deal happen, but because that's a part of who I am. Like when you go back to hey, Jeremy hasn't changed. Jeremy, maybe the goals have changed, maybe the focus has changed, but that's an important element in my life is having people that I can have trust with. That's what helps make me. And for the other party in this deal, one of the things that's been helpful in the navigation is establishing trust with them and, being clear on things, removing as much ambiguity as possible, asking questions. Okay, you said this, but I need clarity what that means. And then to be able to ultimately go, okay, well, once this thing is signed, fully signed in the next week or two here, that the only two things that could truly derail this thing would be the financing, which I'm not at all concerned on this. Could it happen? Sure, anything could happen, but less concerned on that. But is any surprises that come up from the seller side on this? Which there's always going to be surprises. There's surprises that maybe they didn't know about. Maybe there is a surprise they know about. I don't anticipate that, but that could derail this. And then you're talking about 3 years of work literally comes down to the next 30 days, right? Which is weird, right? It's like this 36 months really comes down to the next 36 days. And that's just a weird thing to be in, but it's also exciting because the opportunities that this is going to unlock for those that are involved in this deal is pretty significant, and it's going to benefit a lot of people. Actually, I would even feel confident saying that it'll involve it will have a positive impact off of anybody involved in this, whether they are the investor or the debt source or the client or the whoever in this. And that's what's really exciting about this and is to be able to go, man, you know what? 5 years ago, I could have let something define me, and I didn't.
Right.
And now here I am coming full circle to where, again, I don't know if this deal goes through and finishes, but if it does, I can sit there and I can look at myself in the mirror and go, you know what? You went through a lot of pain. You lied to yourself no matter how many occasions of whatever. But at the end of the day, you looked at yourself and said, you know what? The other people I was partnered up with this did wrong. I didn't pick my decisions wrong on what to do. I just picked who wrong, right? I picked the wrong people, not the wrong thing, you know?
But, things happen for a reason.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Things happen for a reason. I distinctly remember in my home office saying, when I started my business, because focus, I think, is very important for any business owner, but definitely in anybody leading any organization. You have to be clear about, as you said before, here's I'm trying to, this is what I need to do what I need to do for retirement in order to get to that milestone. But also you need to have focus on who I am, what I do, what I'm about. You can't be everything to everyone and be great at everything. People are not built that way. So when I first started my business, I started off, advising people and career coaching and all that. That was going well. But then I had this urge to be Jerry Maguire, or at least the black version of one.
And taller.
And taller. So I always wanted to be a sports agent. And when I realized that, I could do it and it didn't cost a whole lot and I knew what to do, so I'll try to do that. And I also was advising business owners. So I was doing three things. Why? Because I could. Because, hey, I was my own boss, do whatever, But in that first month, something came over me as I was about to send in the certification papers to become a certified MBA agent. It said, Kevin, don't do it. And I said, well, why not? You need to focus. You got 5 clients you're working with. If this works out, then you can build upon that. Why don't you do this one thing, see it out? Actually, that's what's going through my mind. And then the other voice was, well, you need to diversify your opportunities. You need to have multiple sources of income, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So, of course, I did it. When it got certified, all that. Lost money as a result of being an agent. Never made it done. Had people drafted, in baseball. Actually did that. Got drafted by my hometown team, the Chicago White Sox. That was cool. Didn't get paid a dime to do it, but it was cool. Learned a lot through that 3-year journey, which seemed like longer than that. Trust a lot of people along the way in doing that. But because I went through that, I became a better advisor, a better business owner. I learned a lot more about the sports industry, which obviously is important now. So that experience had a purpose. Didn't feel good. Didn't go the way I planned. I could say I didn't choose the right people, to your point, but they were the right people for whatever I was supposed to get out of that experience.
Agreed.
And therefore, I would say, for that reason, same to you, that was the right people for what that was supposed to happen during that time.
And the funny thing too is, being that there are so many similarities between the person now and the person 5 years ago, and again, not same person, but just similarities, is that 5 years ago, Laura, my wife, she had doubts, right? And she was vocal about doubts, and I didn't listen. Now I've learned to become a very good listener to my wife, right? And her being my litmus test on many of things now is because I realize I've got blind spots, and she's there to protect me from my own blind spots. Right. So I said, what do you think? And she actually referenced the person from 5 years ago and said the biggest difference between the two is I always had an unsettling feeling with the person 5 years ago, but she was like, this person, there is no one that she trusts more for me to go do this with, right? And that was huge, right? Because you do learn a lot about, it's kind of like this is, the pain in training teaches you to become better at what you do, right? So I agree with you on that. the events that occurred 5 years ago and what those people did prepared me for now and prepared me for asking the right questions.
That's right.
To prepare, like even the same person is I was texting last night and saying, hey, I'm working to build out bullet points of anything and everything that could go wrong on this, anything and everything that's ugly about it. And you know, all the dark spots of this thing, right? Not the shiny green dollar making signs, but I mean the ugliness of it. So that way he can take it back to his board and go, oh yeah, here's all the good financials and spreadsheets, but this is something else Spann provided, which is anything and everything that could possibly go wrong, they made a list of. Because to me, that creates even a higher level of trust by going, hey, I'm not just here to sell you the rainbow and sunshine. Here's the stuff that if you hadn't thought about it, you need to think about this stuff, because this is a large financial commitment.
Right.
And which was really funny because 5 years ago, they talked about large financial commitments. And then here it is, we're actually doing large financial commitments, which I've also learned when you're talking to people that, you know, could potentially bring, you know, 9 figures to the table, they get real intimate with you real quick, right? Like I literally feel like a hand puppet with somebody up my butt right now. Of like even the most minute details of sitting there. And I'm not the most detail-oriented person, right? I mean, I can be, but like, you know, it goes against my nature to be.
Exactly.
Like when I was reviewing this 10-page document yesterday, and I knew that I had to be on point with this thing. The amount of energy it took me to go line by line, word by word. I mean, and it all the way down to where there was, you and I had spoke about, there was 2 words in it, right side by side, that I was like, this has not been spoken about. We've spoken this, but if we don't change these 2 words, this could potentially just kill a deal that has been in the making of 3 years, right? And we were able to overcome those objections and do that, but it required me to do things that are against my nature, which is getting very, very detailed and involved. But you do all the uncomfortable things and the things you don't like to do when it's a deal that is going to affect the lives of many, 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 many people. And so, but it is on the other side of it, you know, the ego, I guess you could say, side of it is, wow, these folks really do trust me.
Right.
And I am here to do the right thing. And it's almost like, so 5 years ago, in the tens of thousands of dollars that I spent on attorneys, because I wasn't allowed to speak for myself in public. I mean, it's the hardest thing is when you're being attacked and they're attacking the wrong person, right? You just want to look at the public and go, you do know that this had nothing to do with me. This is these 2 yahoos over here. I'm literally the guilt by association, and I can't even defend myself in public. To where it was even, I got to a point that I was like, I was terrified for my name to come up in public, involved in this other situation, because as soon as it did, I knew that phone was going to ring and it was going to be my attorney, and that was going to be a $5,000 bill, right? And just knowing, going, man, every time my name comes up in that circle, it's going to cost me $5,000, and just it becomes just this grind of beating. And just wanting to be able to look at people and go, hey, let me give you the real story on this. And then you got your attorney going, that's why you pay me, is that way you don't get inadvertently drug into this thing because you said something that wasn't intended to be received the way that it was received that drags you into this. So, you know, Donald Kiskowski of McDonald Sanders, as much money as you made on that deal, you better buy a new house from me, Dad. But it
no
was
pressure.
Just no pressure. But it helped develop where I'm at now, that I view risk on such a different level because I'm able to. I've experienced it to where I'm like, I don't want anybody else to experience this, so I'm here to protect, you know, anybody from doing that. And so it's been a pretty incredible journey of like, what are those things that help us develop trust with people, right? I mean, is it like you and I mean, we have this incredible trusted relationship, right? And sometimes we can go months without talking to each other because we're just busy with life. And then we jump on a call and it's hours later sitting there talking and catching up. Is what is it about the elements of trust do you think that, which play into, these athletes are trusting you guys naturally to go, hey, I'm coming up on a crossroads and I'm going to need help navigating this. What are some of those elements of trust do you think that just really play?
Yeah, what's interesting about that, the athletic organizations trust us. They trust us to help them manage the development of the athletes that are in their organizations. We have work to do to become that trusted advisor for the athlete. From a business model standpoint, it made sense to engage the athletic organizations first because, most of them are minors, or they're part of a university or some institution. So going direct would have been very expensive and time consuming. So having the engagement with the athletic organizations and having their trust inherently could lead to more trust and engagement from the athlete. Where we are today, though, is that our platform is used to say, hey, you have to do this course. I hit the table. I wasn't supposed to do that.
Yeah, Austin's in there going, don't knock on the table.
But you have to take this course. It's assigned to you. So part of the development we're launching this year is to, based upon the interest of the athlete, based on where they are in their journey, to recommend content to them. So it's not so therefore we're speaking to them where they are, as opposed to it's just about the athletic organization is assigning it to you. So therefore, when we do that, the relationship starts to change. Oh, they're interested in talking to me. They're not just interested in serving the athletic organization. We can do both. And I think a small change in how we do things in terms of recommending content, recommending videos, things that help with their development where they are. They'll be on the app at that time when that epiphany comes. Oh, senior day is tomorrow, and I don't know what I'm going to do after that. They can go to the app and then they can start figuring it out. If they haven't done some work already, in most cases they probably have. So I think that's where the next evolution of the company and our growth is dependent upon our ability to gain that trust, or at least be that brand that's thought of as the trusted advisor, that trusted source to say, when I know I know I need to prepare for what's next, even though I may not be close to being done, then no matter if I'm a collegiate student athlete, whether I'm a pro athlete, then I would take that next step with game plan. So there's work to be done there. But I would say the inherent need for trust is, and even what you trust yourself, because sometimes we don't even trust our own judgment, is without information from some source, it's hard to make decisions. If you don't make decisions, then you're stagnant. If you're stagnant, then you're not moving forward. And not moving forward is not being human. A lot of us are really good at being stagnant, but we're not being true to what we're supposed to be about. We're supposed to be progressive, supposed to be continuous improvement moving forward. So I think that those of us who seek it out more is because we know that we can't do it by ourselves, and we need the other people that we can trust to fill in those gaps or provide that opportunity or that connection to help to take that next step, wherever that next step may be.
So you've established trust with one side of the client base, right? Mm-hmm. Bringing the talent. How do you establish trust with the consumer that is going to ultimately hire the talent?
Good point. Data, consistency, access, cost effective, and focus. For the community of users that we have, athletic organizations and athletic departments, I've always said if we had 20 companies that say, hey, we're sponsors of Gameplan and we're the primary companies that believe in their mission and their brand and what they're about, then we could do a lot of great things. Doesn't mean that other companies will not be able to find talent on our platform and that athletes will only want to work for those 20 or whatever the number of companies would be. But yet we have to establish those relationships with those key employers that are aligned with our mission. And our mission is not just about this, even though we focus on athletes, it's really about helping someone at that time of transition. Mm-hmm. When they realize that this is done and I want to do something else, or I need to be prepared for that. Because, every new season you have to start off and you got to go through certain training. That is preparation for your transition into that new academic year, new season. So that's what we do. So I think for employers and companies, if they know that we understand their needs and we're consistent in our approach to how we deliver on connecting them with top talent, and give them information and data about that talent so they can make effective decisions about who's a fit for their organizations in a cost-effective manner, then we'll have no problem getting those partners, more partners. We have a few today, but we're definitely in growth mode to take that next step.
Man, I love what you said about that. The data, the consistency, the transparency, all of those things is like when call it a year and a half ago, I went into execution mode of, this next stage of where we've gotten today. And it was the data that presently gets the attention, right? But instead, like what I learned 5 years ago, because 5 years ago, I didn't know anything from anything, right? I was transitioning from the military to first responders to, I'd never been in business, I didn't know what was what.
You've been in business.
Well, I've been in business, but at a higher level to where it was true. Right. I was in uncharted territories I was relying on this trust that with this person that was basically their data was hocus pocus at the end of the day is what it was.
Can I interject for a second?
Yeah.
That you reconnected with where you were thinking at that time, but because of that mindset is what allowed for that situation to occur.
Yeah. So
that wasn't trust. That was, I don't trust myself, so I'm going to look to you. When in reality, the reason why we admitted you to the program is because we saw something in you that you were developing to see in yourself. So going back to what I said before, you needed that antagonist to bring you in full circle to what was already there.
Yeah. And in being involved in that and seeing the difference between that hocus pocus, right, shiny object, lightning in a bottle, as this individual called it, but there was no data to support it. Whereas now I was able to go to the investors in this and say, here is the last 14 months of data on this particular portion of this. And by the way, all the data fed into this. The source of that data is straight from the bank account, from the debits and credits of a bank account that pours into this. Right. And then these are category. Could you go in there and tweak what falls into what category? Yeah, but it's still this amount of money came in, this amount of money went out, and this amount of money was left over, right? But having that data, learning that lesson 5 years ago of how important data can be and then how reliable that data is, then at that point, it's the data telling a story. It's not me. I'm just I'm just kind of like a book on Audible, right? I didn't write the book. I'm just the narrator of saying this is what the data says, and it's been just really educational and fulfilling to be able to get to that and be able to go and, like you said, staying focused. Like, on this particular project, and someone that is at an arm's distance, a part of it with some other parts of it, called me and said, hey, well, I've got this other thing over here. And I said, man, that sounds great, but that's not within the focus here. Because I've learned, and I wrote this down, is one of the things I think was a heavy learning in becoming a more successful professional is mitigating the distractions, right? The shiny objects, the things that shoulda, woulda, coulda be, right? But you're like, no, I have to stay focused over here. I'm not saying there won't be room for something like that later, but in order to execute the plan and the strategy we have right now, we need to stay hyper-focused right where we're at, because it creates that, as another word you use, consistency, right? And the data for this particular thing should be similar within all the elements involved. Now you bring in this other data source, which is different, right? So it's not same, similarities, but not same. And I want to be able to look at the investors and say, this is the data. It's consistent. We've been focused. There's all the transparency here. There's, that's why I say the thing that could derail this would be a surprise from the seller's end, which I don't anticipate. I feel like we built a pretty good trusted relationship from their side. But that's the biggest thing that would be like, oh yeah, hey, by the way, right? But I don't anticipate that. But I'm also not foolish enough to go, it can't happen, right? I hope that it doesn't, but I'm not in control of that.
Right.
But, to work on, because spending the amount of time that I spend on this distracts me from my normal role in what I do for the Spann Group, which means that I'm not pouring more deals into the Spann Group because I'm hyper-focused on this. And if this thing goes away, then there is a large chunk of missed time for that. Now, the team will still be good. We do top 1% of producers and whatnot. But scaling that side of things, I had to come over here to say, no, I need to be hyper-focused on that. And having Laura be able to do that for me. Like, I didn't even realize till when we were coming back from Colorado this weekend, and she was like, oh, yeah, by the way, before we get back, here's some things you need to be aware of. And I was like, whoa, hey, what was all this? And she was just like, well, it's gone on for the last couple of, it's nothing major, but it was just like, hey, here's a couple landmines we need to avoid. And it was like, man, why didn't you tell me about this weeks ago? And she goes, I didn't want to distract you from where you were focused on. She goes, because I think what you're doing is important. I support what you're doing. I support the people that we've built trust with to go do this. And I didn't want you to get derailed because, something else pops up. And so that made me have even a greater appreciation for Laura, not just being my partner in crime, my life partner, my spouse, my business partner, my partner for everything, but really allowed me to go, man, I really outpunted my coverage with Laura. Right. Like, how did I get this damn lucky? And so having yet another trusted portion in this. And that's why I think what you're doing is really incredible, because these athletes, right, just like military and first responders, have lived inside of essentially a bubble for so long that they know what they know. And now, either due to their decision or a decision made not by them, a transition has to occur. And I know what it's like to sit there and go, well, what do I do, right? Yeah. And then to have that trusted advisor, which is really interesting because you came from that environment also of, helping people get to the big leagues per se. And then it was, well, I didn't get compensated in that, but the lessons, right? The experience that, if I asked you, based on the amount of experience that you got, now, of course, we would all want to get paid always, right? But if you had to go back and go, hey, if you had a chance to go back and turn the hands of time and go, I could have taken some compensation on this, but not got the experience that helps me where I'm at today, or get the experience and not the compensation, being able to turn back the hands of time, which one would you have chosen?
Interesting.
I come up with some real hair-brained ones.
Yeah, that was interesting. Right? Yeah. Now, the first thing that came to mind is actually a decision I don't regret. But it was a situation where I wasn't going to get paid. So as when I went to grad school, I was focused, my essays, everything was focused on getting a job with a sports league or sports team. And within the first semester at Indiana University, I connected with the Indiana Pacers and their IT department. And they were offering me an internship. So I was like, man, that was easy. But then he told me they weren't going to pay me. I was like, what? I said, wait a minute, okay. I quit my job. Wasn't getting paid a whole lot anyway, but I still quit it. I moved to another state to pursue an MBA, where the average salary at that time, I think, was $60,000. That's how long ago this was. $60,000 for a graduating MBA. and my quote unquote dream job is not going to pay me? I said no immediately. And I told him why. I said, well, I went back to school to advance my career. I went back to school in order to move forward. And plus, I already worked in sports and I got paid because I was working at Stats Inc. many years ago, and I was getting paid to do a similar job for all the teams and all the leagues as opposed to just one. So if I can get paid for that, I should at least get paid something for this, even if it's an internship. And so I understand, but that's not what we do. It's okay. Well, we'll stay in touch. That was it. Now, reason why I don't regret that decision, I was being true to my brand. I was being true to the goal. But in my mind, I had set in my mind that I was going to be this sports statistician, analyst, IT guy. That day, that died. That was not who I am. Who I am is someone else who's going to be a business person. And I had a business discussion with someone about my career and what I was going to do. Same thing with Ford. Ford offered me a job, as I mentioned before, to work in their IT department. Was very impressed with me and all that. But unlike their marketing and finance jobs they were offering the MBAs, in the IT department, they offered undergrads and master's degree students the same salary. So they was offering me $24,000 less than my classmates who were getting job offers in marketing and finance. So I told them no immediately. Why? Because my purpose was not to be lowball, and even though I didn't have it, those other two offers came later, I just knew that wasn't, so you want to think about it? No, I don't have to think about it. So I would say to tell my younger self, make those decisions again because bigger things are to come. Even though that was a risk, that was bird in the hand, but it wasn't really an opportunity. It was more of a testing my resolve to what I was really there for. And that's happened multiple times, Could I have stayed at TCU? Sure. Could I have joined Gameplan before? Maybe. Could I have stayed at Sabre longer? Yeah. I'd probably stay longer than I should have. But I stayed, and it was a reason for that. So my point to all that is, going back to what I said before, in the category of when you say never, be open-minded. Listen to others, that's trusted sources, and also to yourself. And be true to your brand in order to make sure that you remember who you are and who you want to be. And in that situation, both what happened within months of each other, or a year of each other, actually. I did just that, and I'm very happy because I did that. Now, ironically, my wife grew up in the Detroit area, so. So that's how in my
it's like Texas. It just keeps circling around.
One of my nieces actually works for Ford, so so it's kind of funny how that worked out.
But you're right though. Is when you and what's really funny is people would confuse the dollar amount with the value, right? Mm-hmm. It's hard to say no to what would seem like easy business. Right. Mm-hmm. But when you stay focused and you stay true to what our brand is, right? Like we don't cut our commissions. Right. And we do get asked every once in a while, hey, well, can we negotiate, commission? Or, and I'm like, well, the answer is always no unless you ask. And they're like, well, I'm asking. Okay, well, the answer is no. But it wasn't about, hey, is there a deal? It was just that, listen, if you're looking for someone transactional, that's not who we are. Right. Recently, and this is actually a repeat client and great client, loved them to death, and was like, hey, let's talk about commission. And I said, look, I can appreciate the request, but if you haven't identified this already, here's what I want you to see what you're getting. This is why you pay full price with us. You got a team of 5 people, and everybody in here has got a college degree. Now, does that mean that's what you need to be successful? No, it just says that we're willing to go start things and finish things. 2, you have a lawyer on this team, and you've got 2 MBAs on this team. So what other real estate team do you have that has this much experience, has done well over $100 million in deal flow, and it has as much experience as us? You don't get a team like that because you got a coupon, right? You get a team like this because you want the subject matter experts that are going to go. You're getting what you pay for. And I do believe that when people cut themselves short. Mm-hmm. Because here's the deal. Once you put a discount on your forehead, it's really hard to go back from that, right? That's right. Because what do you think they're going to go do? They're going to go tell all their friends, hey, they gave me a deal. They gave me a deal. Mm-hmm. They gave me a deal. And, and I'm not going to say we haven't, right? There was 2 occasions of which we did. One ultimately dissolved, never happened, which there was a lot of broken promises from their end to us. The importance of documenting things in a contract, is very important. Goes back to that trust, fences make good neighbors, just like contracts make good business deals, right? And then the other one was a very painful experience, even though we got the deal done. But it was important to experience, hey, if you do agree to go do this at that discount, just understand you're focusing on the ease of it, or maybe you're just trying to be generous for one reason or another, is stick to what your number is.
Oh, yeah.
Because the people that respect you and value you are going to be okay with it.
That's right.
Now, like his other clients at Ash, not naturally, everything still went forward. He was like, actually his culture index is very similar to mine. So I was like, oh, yeah, I would have asked too, probably. But it allowed us to, still, carry out very successfully. And that's what I would tell folks out there, especially these young athletes and veterans and so forth, is when you define what your value is, stick true to your value. Right? And because the second you stop believing what your value is, then why should anybody else believe it and pay for it themselves? Right.
Once you change the value or valuation of yourself, your business, your house, wherever else, it takes time to increase the value. And depending upon the market, you may be behind in that value equation. So that's why a lot of times, when in coaching and advising people, they say, hey, I've been looking for a job. I've been looking at these things because I know I could get them fit. I said, well, no. Your eye level needs to be consistent with who you are, what your brand is, what you stand for, what your resume say you are. If you go below that, someone says, they're either going to say something's wrong, they're running from something, so therefore you're overqualified, which means I don't believe that you're really actually applying for this, so I don't want to deal with the headache. You're not going to be here forever. It's everything you can think of is bad. That's why you don't get those. But then what has happened to you? The job you thought you could get, slam dunk, they tell you no. All of a sudden, now you reduce your number, and now your esteem and your view of yourself is dropped. So just like when you do a deal, you discount and you don't get it. Wow, okay, that's taking the shorts twice. So I think that's where you have to know your value. And even if you do give a discount or you give someone a deal, somehow you have to make sure they know what the manufacturer resale price or suggested retail price was, such that when they repeat it to someone else, they're going to tell them that price as opposed to the deal they got. They have to feel special enough to say, oh, we have a different relationship, that's why I got this deal, but you may not have that, so that's why I'm going to refer you, and it's going to come at a different level. When you're young and small business, that's a learning point, because growth and more customers is what you're looking for. And as a result, that's definitely an area of focus for us as we work with more athletic organizations and we work with corporations, where we have to make sure that we feel comfortable about the value that we have today and what that value will be in the future, and that we extract that value for the services that we provide. So, and the software and the technology we provide. So, yeah, it's interesting you brought that up, because that's definitely something we talk about. Yeah.
Well, I look forward to more of these episodes where you come on.
Yeah.
I enjoy these conversations. And,
same here,
when you're a repeat, you don't do it normally the way we do with the other one. So if anybody wants to learn more about Kevin's journey and what he would tell a 20-year-old self, you can always go back to his previous episode, which there will be more episodes coming with Kevin Davis in the future.
Yeah.
With a wealth of knowledge to gift upon the listeners out there. So now, how do people find out more about you?
Yeah.
And where to go? What are some plugs for the website? All that. Sure. Yeah.
So Gameplan, our website is wearegameplan.com. If you are with an athletic organization of any size, reach out to us. We'd be more than happy to be of service to help with the development of your athletes. If you're a corporation looking to hire young professionals, particularly at the entry level, graduate from college, reach out to us. As I mentioned, if you knew there's a source of talent of people who are used to running on a schedule, working more hours than not, and have college degrees and looking for something, if you want to meet them in a cost-effective way, and also for them to get to know you and your brand and what you're about and what life is at your company, reach out to us. Also, I still do advisory services and work with executives of corporations and small business owners. So you can reach out to me on my LinkedIn, or you can reach out to me on my website, ProfessorK.com.
And for all the listeners out there, if you didn't have a chance to write all this down, naturally, this, as usual, when you go to www.myexperiencedrealtor.com, click on podcasts and read more, Kevin Davis, the second round, you will be able to see all the contact information to be able to download, to reach out to Kevin if you're a business looking to hire talent, and if you're an athletic program that's looking to get some development, then by all means, please do. And as always, if you're looking to buy and sell real estate anywhere around the planet, just go to our homepage on myexperiencedrealtor.com, click Find a Trusted Professional, and we'll get you taken care of. Kevin, thank you for coming, brother.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks, man.